Hi everyone, it's Chloe. Welcome back to my channel. This is so weird. I don't like to show my face. I don't mind it, but I'm not against it, but also this isn't my channel. So I don't usually do this type of thing. So this is very new for me. But this is the much anticipated psychic video. So if you are newer here, I had a sinking fund that was called Psychic that I saved about $650 for. My family went to see a psychic in our area. She's pretty local, very well known. So she's legit. I'll get into how I got into psychics later. But I stayed up for that for so many months, and everyone would constantly question what is this sinking fund? People actually cared about how it went and had questions. Quick backstory on how my family is into psychics. You usually believe them or you don't. But we had a lost dog a few years ago, and it was very well known in our state, basically. Everyone was like, Rio, the missing dog. He had a Facebook page and everything. People would stop us and be like, you're the Facebook dog people. And we're like, did you see our dog? That's all we cared about. We didn't care about Facebook fame or anything. But this lady reached out to us, who was a dog psychic, pet psychic. And she basically found our dog for us. I'm not going to get into it because it's a long story, but she told us Red Bull, look for this siding in the house, look for a water pump, this, that. When we found him, everything that she saw was accurate, everything. My dad wasn't a believer. We were we're just looking for our dog lady, but she was legit, so that kind of took us into the psychic world. I had spoken to one about a year and a half ago. A little story on me, which is why I planned this psychic trip. I planned it. I spoke to the lady and everything. I booked this. I have 2 deceased grandparents, my Nana and Pop-Pop on my dad's side. But I've always been connected to them as a little girl. I used to see them. I used to point them out in pictures. I used to talk about them. I used to say things that they were afraid of. My Nana was her biggest fear was hard candies and ball-shaped food. She was afraid her kids would choke. So things like that. So my dad was she's 2. How does she know this? So I've always been very close with them. I have felt them. I am in no way, shape, or form claiming to be any type of psychic, but I am very spiritual. So I feel as you get more spiritual, personally, I believe you get more in tune with other frequencies. And I have felt them, and I even the one day was feeling things for my grandmother, which is kind of hard to explain, but I felt her emotions, and I was talking to my dad, and he was like, you sound like my mom right now, and I was like, weird. Anyway, stuff like that. So I've always been very in tune with them, and for no reason. I've never met them. I am 20. My Pop-Pop passed away 23 years ago. My Nana 26 years ago, I think. So yeah, very odd. So that's the reason I am myself very into psychics, because when you have a one-sided relationship with someone, because they can't talk back to me, but I talk to them all the time, and I go to the cemetery every week, and it's hard to feel valid in that relationship. So psychics are very important to me. I saw one about a year ago. I got some info, my Pop-Pop sends me pennies. They send me animals. I'm very in tune with animals, which will be brought up later. All that type of stuff. So I have hints of things from them. I have similar things in my car, when they died, their house was robbed. So everything we have of them is gone. We have nothing of them besides a few knickknacks. So I have 2 of the knickknacks, his work watch and her magnet she had, in my car at all times. So they're always around me. But anyway, into the psychic. That was a bit of a backstory because I sound crazy. I was sitting next to my cousin, the psychic. It was my 5 in my family, my aunt and my cousin, and my other aunt and my cousin. I was sitting next to the cousin I'm really close to, so we thought I might trigger spirits because we're besties. I don't know. Because both our energies match really well, so we sat together. And I'm not going to talk about anyone else in the story because that's not my story to share, and everything the psychic said was very personal. I mean, it's your dead relatives. They will come for your neck. They did to my brother. So, their story's not mine to tell. So I'm just going to say that some things might not make sense, or they did build off of other things, but not my story to tell. Also, there is mention of religion in this story. I myself am not religious. I partake in witchcraft, but I'm also not pagan or Wiccan. I just practice witchcraft, but I don't believe in God, anything. Sorry if you do. I don't care if you do. Obviously, it's everyone else's life. I just ask you don't judge me for that. But I do believe in like the universe. However, the psychic is very religious. Most psychics are, but yeah. So, there are some mentions of like heaven, in the story, the afterlife. She didn't really mention anything about God to me, but there are like religious aspects. So just a warning, if you're not religious, I'm not meaning to offend anyone, but this is what was said to me. So we're about an hour. We recorded the whole thing. I have 2 hours here on my laptop of recording the voice memo. So we are an hour and 15 minutes in. It was a 2-hour session, and she didn't talk to me yet. And I was like, I know my grandparents here. They talked to my dad. They talked to my aunt. And I was like feeling a little bit bummed. I'm like, one, I planned this. I paid so much money. But two, like, they didn't have anything to say to me. And to me, I was like, I've been in your life for 20 years. How do you have nothing to say to me? I talk to you all day, every day. I went to the cemetery beforehand. I was like, you better come through. And I spiritually am closer with my Nana. So, I was like, girl, where are you? But then she kind of like, what she sees and hears things. But because there's so many people in the room, she can get cut off. She was talking to my cousin, and then she just was like, hold on. And she looks at me and my 2 siblings. We're all sitting next to each other. And she goes, one of you guys needs to like speak up. She kind of said it like, do you have anything you want to say? Like, almost like if I didn't talk to anyone, bring them up. So I waited for someone to say something and no one did. So I was like, I would love to hear from my Nana and Papa, but they were also here. So they have nothing to say to me. That's just that, I'm not going to force the ghost to talk to me. And she goes, no, like I was hearing something, and my pop-up's name's Kenny, and she goes, Kenny was bringing up the grandparents and all that. So I was like, oh, my grandparents. Actually, there's a lot of backstories to this story. The first thing that came through, she said, did you have a bushy-tailed gray cat? And I said, no, I'm allergic to cats. But you all are gonna freak out. I had a squirrel. I'm from Pennsylvania. They're everywhere. And I'm very in tune with animals. So my family member had a squirrel at the time. They were raising because it was abandoned, and they found another squirrel about 6 weeks old. And he was in such desperate shape, he like crawled into my aunt's arm when she found him. Like, he was like asking for help. And they already had one, so they're like, we can't take another because different age gaps, like the one didn't like the other. So I took him, named him Flynn. I can do a whole story on that if you would like, because I have a lot to say about my boy. But I raised Flynn, got him in October, and let him go in January of last year. So I was like, I had a squirrel. And she was like, oh my God. And I was like, like, I know, crazy, and also probably not legal, but I had a squirrel. And she was like, he's here. And I was like, all I said was, so he's dead? She was like, oh my God. Like, I think she like was playing it off because she really thought he was dead. Now, all animals she sees don't mean they're dead. People can come through, or like mostly animals can like send their spirit. But she was telling me, she's like, I'm pretty sure he's dead. And I was like, now with my son, I tried not to cry because I just found out my son's dead. And she was like, oh, he's so funny. So she kept asking, like, he was in your house? And I was like, yeah. She's like, bushy tail. And that's how I always recognized him after I let him go. I was like, it's Flynn. He has the most gorgeous tail. I was trying to play it off. I was like literally crying. And I was like, it might be news to me. I was so heartbroken, but I didn't want to show it, because it's not her fault that she got that message. And then she proceeds to tell me, she's like, he wasn't yours. Someone gave you him. And I was like, yeah, my aunt and uncle had another squirrel, so they couldn't keep him. And she was like, oh my God. She's like very personable. She was like, oh my God, if I could have a lion, I would. She wasn't judging me for it. And then she was saying, she was like, your chest, like he loved to sleep on your chest. And I was like, yeah, I have literal videos of him sleeping on my boobs. She's like, yeah, he loved them. She kept saying that was his favorite spot, and I was like, I could either that or in my hoodies, because he's like slept there like hanging off of my hood. But then she was like, he just talks. He's so funny and sociable. And I was like, yeah, like he loved me, and I taught him well, not to like trust other people, not to like I was raising him to be wild. He only trusted me because I was his mom. And then she kind of like moved on from that really fast. So I was just left thinking my squirrel was dead. I was like, and she was like, did you go through a breakup? And no, I haven't. Haven't talked to, I think, a male in like 3 years. So I don't know what that was, but she did mention a breakup. So I don't know if one's gonna come up or what, but I don't got time for that. I don't got time for that. Then she just kept saying Flynn was talking about a relationship. So I don't know what that is, but some things could happen in the future more so, and like, if things happen, I'll know he's there because he was aware. But I just have to wait and see. And then she knew me and my cousin did hair and makeup. I'm the makeup portion of it. She's the hair. She said, you went to school for makeup? I said, no, I went to school for hair. She goes, so you do hair? I said, no, I do makeup. She was like, okay, blah, 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 you're good at it. You're good at hair. And I said, no, that's why I do makeup. So then my pop-pop just jumped in. I don't know if she didn't know where he was going with that, or because she kept saying, you're good at hair. And if my pop-pop's like any typical grandfather would have been, he would have just been like, you're good at everything, you know? Grandparents just want to support you in most things you do. But Pop-Pop cut off Flynn and was like, oh, she was like, oh, Kenny, which is my Pop-Pop. So he basically was like jumped either in, so she was seeing Flynn on the table. Like, she was like this little squirrel. She just kept looking at him. So either Pop-Pop like cut her off hearing wise, or like he stood in front of the table. And what surprised me with my Pop-Pop was, I love him to death. I hear him in my hallway. He walks the hallway at night. We have stories about him too, but I personally, as a child, was closer with my grandmother. So my Nana never came through. Only Pop-Pop did. But like, she was there, she just didn't talk. So there's a reason for everything, of course. So I don't question it, but I was like, ouch, my feelings. But now that like it's been a while, it's been almost 2 months, I like understand why my Pop-Pop was the one to die after. He died of a broken heart of her passing. We think my Pop-Pop came through more because he was closer, like he knew my brother when he was born. So we think like he was more of a, closer to us grandkids because he was there for part of my brother's life, who was the oldest in my family. So we think he just got to experience more of the life of the younger kids. So we think he came through more because she had died before most of the grandkids in our family were born. But then she goes on to talk about my grandfather's appearance before he died. And I'm looking at my dad because I didn't know what he looked like. I mean, I had like a few pictures, but, you know, my dad was there when he died. So I was like looking at him and nodding, you know? But everything was spot on 100% because she can see them. So she's like, you know, thin but like has a belly, and I was like, exactly him. And then she starts talking about how he smokes and what kind of like flavor he smokes and what like cigarette he smoked, and talking about how like he didn't do it often here, but he's up in heaven like puffing away. And we're just like, so if we ever smell anything, is no one in my household smokes. So sometimes like we'll smell a little bit of smoke. I don't, but I know like my dad does sometimes, or he thinks about it. She's, you know, kind of reassuring that he's here. Then she turns back to me and she goes, Chloe, and she goes, oh. She goes, so you're close with your grandfather? And I said, I never met them. She goes, oh. And then, I'm not trying not to cry. Because what they say means like the world to me. Sorry, this is so hard to talk about like out loud and not get emotional. Then he points to me and he goes, I'm close to her. And that's like all the validation I needed, like knowing that like they're there when I'm at the cemetery. They're there when I'm talking to them in my car. They're there when I sit up in bed and I'm like, something's in this room. There's some energy shift. So it just like reassured me that like we are best friends and like they know it too. Then he proceeds to say, once again, I'm close to her. And then she goes, they both passed before you were born, Bella. And I said, yeah. And she goes, and he just said to me, yeah, because she hung out with us up here before she was born. And I was like, before she started to explain, I was like, that makes so much sense. And then she proceeds to look at me. She's like, you always had a bond with them. Like, you always felt close to them. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, there's a reason for that. Like, you were up there with them. Her mentioning a bit about, like, us being in heaven together was actually really cool. Because she didn't really verify, like, reincarnation. But she said, like, past lives and stuff she's talked about before. Because my cousin's gone to her before. So my cousin's like, yeah, like, she told her about her past life and everything. So, not that I'm trying to change anyone's views, but kind of reassuring on it, like, I was with them in heaven before I was born. She said there's no hell. I don't know. She said, there's just heaven, and, like, I was with them before they sent me back down because we had known each other before. So it's, like, crazy to think that, like, we were homies in a different life, you know? And we just missed each other, so they sent me back down. And I'm like, come on, really? We could have hung out? Come on. But it's the life I meant to live, I guess. So, but just cool, like, knowing it, like, and she also said about, like, lives in general. Like, we have a lot of windows in our lives that we could potentially die. But people have to be strong enough to get through those windows before, like, your actual death. And some people fall through those windows and do pass too early, unfortunately. But it was cool to, like, learn more about, like, the afterlife. But, like, bad people take classes, she said, instead of, like, going to hell, because there's no hell. It's very interesting. And then she proceeds to go into mentioning what I mentioned earlier. She was like, she looks at my parents, and she goes, when she was little, did you catch her, like, talking to them? And my dad's like, yeah, like, she both talked to her when she was little. And my parents then started to explain it, like, I would point them out in pictures, and blah, blah, blah. And my mom was like, yeah, she would think she saw them. And the psychic was like, well, she did see them. And I was like, period. I did that, you know? No, I'm kidding. It's just very reassuring to know that, like, I'm not crazy. And, like, I've always felt that bond, and it's always been there for a reason, you know? And then my mom proceeded to say, she would always just say, I'm talking to my friends. And then the psychic, like, every single word just means so much to me. She was like, well, they are her friends. They're still her friends. And I was like, oh, that's just so special, you know? And I was sitting there, like, just sobbing. Like, my parents are talking for me at this point, because I'm just sitting there, like, I had a big cardigan on that day, and I was, like, holding my face, sobbing. And, she goes, but it's your grandfather. He's just talking and talking and talking, which is funny, because my grandfather, when he was alive, until grandkids came along, he was in multiple wars, and, saw a lot of awful things. And, he was one of those old men that, like, didn't talk. He, like, grunted. He'd be like, hi, Kenny, and he'd be like, you know? So, he was not talkative until, like, children came into the picture. So, like, knowing he loves to talk to me and about me and all that, I'm just like, that's my pop-up, that's my pop-up. I actually, you know, those, like, boards you can put, like, the letters in and make, like, sayings and phrases and stuff. I actually have this on, my vanity to wake up to every day. He said, we always watch out for you. Kiddo, you're doing fine. And that's something I really, like, I'm in therapy and everything. I talk about it because it's something I stuff. And I have really, really bad issues with, like, the future and, like, failing. And I always feel, I have, like, depression and stuff, so I always talk to them in those times when I'm, like, overthinking. Just knowing he's like, we're always with you. You're doing fine. I'm just like, you know, like, it's a relief, and that they're hearing what I'm saying. It's funny that he said that, because he's like, you're doing great. I wish I could, like, put the audio in, but I don't know if there's any legalities against using her voice, even though she let us record. I don't know what the, like, that, you know, legal stuff is. But I keep, like, pausing. There's gonna be so much editing in this, because I keep just, like, saying what she's saying, and then going back to the filming and just repeating her. And then she's like, he says you're feeling kind of stuck, and that's exactly how I've been feeling for years. Nana pop up, like, I'm just feeling so trapped where I am right now, and I want to get out of my small town. I want to get out, you know, do something with my life. I want to be able to be so successful. And so him saying, like, you're feeling really stuck is exactly how I'm feeling. They're listening. He proceeds to say, you're not stuck. Your feet are not cemented to the ground. You're free to do whatever you want, but you're also a baby. And he's like, you're 20. But to me, I'm like, I'm 20. I'm running late in life. And he's like, you're a baby. You're 20. Relax. You're exactly where you should be. Everyone individually mostly got read. Like she would like direct her conversation towards certain people and about like certain spirits and stuff. And she, a lot of my family has like issues I gotta do, like self-esteem issues or like feeling stuck or not doing enough, and that's what I'm gonna get into. But she was like, you guys are all so hard on yourself. She's like, you too. I need to start having classes about this. She's like, love yourself. And then she proceeds to be like, stand naked in the mirror, everything hanging out and jiggling. She's like, and love yourself. And I was like, no. And she gives us like a mini like self-love lesson. It was kind of funny. But then she was like, you need to turn this around. She's like looking at me. She's like, you need to stop this. You're going down a rabbit hole of depression, which this is the first thing she said that I was like, besides like the relationship thing that Flynn said, I was like, I've been a lot more depressed previously. At this point of time, I was doing fine. I'm always depressed. Just girly things, so quirky. But I'm just saying, like, my depression's always there. But at this point in time, at this specific few weeks, I was doing fairly fine. So this was like weird that my pop-up was like, you're in a really rough time right now, because I wasn't. And I was actually doing a lot better than I was multiple months prior in a row. So I was taking it more like general, more so like, you gotta do better. Like, but she was saying, you're such a Debbie Downer. Like, everything that like goes wrong in your life, it's like, oh, why me? My life is over. Instead of like working through that, I always take a step back. And it's exactly what I do. And I'm not so more like, I'm kind of grumpy sometimes, but it's more so like when something goes wrong, I crumble. So that was very interesting that he was like, it was kind of like tough love, because I was like, okay, this, you're saying this in front of everyone, this is kind of like embarrassing, but he's right, and everyone in the room knows he was right. With the negative Nancy thing, he was more just so saying like, I'll be doing really good, and I'll start getting confident in myself. I'll start like knowing my worth, and then when one bad thing happens, I'm like I take myself so many steps back, and he's so right. Like, you have to learn to like step over these hills instead of like letting yourself roll back down it. So I'm working on it, I guess. Then you guys are gonna love this. The next thing he says, you can actually hear my dad scoff in the video because he knows about this. He goes, I couldn't get that out. You're saving money. And my dad goes, because he like knew, and I was like, yeah, like a little bit. And then she's like, he says you have so much money you could buy a house. And when I think back at it, I was like, no. But I think back 23 some years ago, I might have been able to with my amount of money in my savings account and all my money together. But right now, no. But he was like just so proud of my finances. He was like, you're gonna buy a house one day. And he I think he said specifically, you have like $6,000. He's like, you have so much money. And I think at the time I did the math then, and when I calculated some of my numbers in my account, in one of my savings account and stuff, and mixed with my sinking funds, it was about $6,000. And I was like, when I got home, I was like, Pop, you should be my like accountant. Like, oh my god, nosy. And he has emphasized again, like, you have so much money put away. And I was like, not in these days, Pop, not in these days. But it's like she said again, you'll buy a house, which I love because I want a house one day. I wanted to move out when I was like 18, thinking like I was financially ready, and I wasn't. Of course, who is? That's not working full time. So it's nice to hear though that I will buy a house. Then he proceeds to mock me and go, about 6,000. Someone get their grandpa. Then she proceeded to say, you'll get more. You'll get more. So Papa was manifesting me money. Let's go, Papa. Let's go to the bank. Let's get direct deposit, Papa. Let's go. I was like, he better be subscribed in heaven. Then he proceeds to continue smoking and then talk to my dad. He starts making fun of my dad. But that was basically the end of what she was saying to me during the session. But then at the end, I hugged her and I thanked her. And the wait list for this was about 1.5 years when I signed up 1.5 years ago. Now we signed up again for like another 2.5 years. So I just, I said thank you for doing this. I was so excited to meet you and finally like do this, blah blah blah. And then she was like, she said something. We weren't filming it because, like the session was done. We were just saying our goodbyes. She like hugged everyone, and but she said to me, oh my gosh, what'd she say? I'm pretty sure she said something about like, they sent you here, for your parents. And I was like, that means so much to me. And I proceeded to show her. I have it covered up with makeup, I think. Ignore my awful skin. But I don't know if you can see it with my foundation, but if not, I'll insert a picture. I have a Christmas tree birthmark. But my grandmother died on Christmas. So I always think of that as like, I only made the connection like a few months ago, and I was like, bruh. So I showed her that, and she was like, oh my gosh. She's like, yeah, my grandmother had a part in sending me down too. Because like I was kind of like upset that she didn't say anything to me, but then now I'm okay with it. But at first I was like, we're gonna fist fight. But yeah, she was like, yeah, like they love you so much. So that was just so nice to hear. So then we kind of just like got home and followed up with everything, and like everyone talked things out and was like, well, this made sense with this and blah blah. And it was just like, I know it's such a privilege that we had this experience, but I think if people can put the money aside and can have the privilege of going, it's an experience I want to do every day of my life. It was amazing. But it's funny then because this is a little end bit. But it's funny because at the, I had to now go home and mourn my squirrel. I was like crying hysterically multiple times a day for multiple days. So that's part of the reason I had Bella, because I emotional support. So I reached out to the pet psychic we had initially talked to, about my dog, and she got back to me, and I'll insert the texts here. I'm very annoying and dramatic, so sorry about it. But basically, I was like, hi, I'm just checking up. I don't need to talk to him. I want to check up on my squirrel. I talked to another psychic, and she's not specifically a pet psychic, but she can see animals too, of course. And I was like, can you just check in and see if my squirrel is dead? If he's dead, is it something I did? Because that was eating me alive. I'm like, did I raise him wrong? Did I not teach him enough skills? Blah blah blah. And she sent back, he's alive. The way my house is set up, our backyard, and then it's like a hill, then a trail, and then more houses. And she's like, he sees like a downslope with houses, a tree house, which we built him when we released him. She's like, he sees a tree house, that slope with houses. He's northwest of your home, and he's with others of his kind. Which is funny because on the iPhone compass, because I was sobbing and I ran outside, because I really thought he was dead. Northwest is like my neighbor's backyard, and like there's a massive squirrel nest, and I was like, he's still home. Then she proceeded to say he's so funny and like blah blah blah, and I did a really good job. So like that made me so emotional. I'm a Pisces moon, so like I cry at everything. My Gemini sun thinks I'm like tough. No, I'm absolutely not. I will cry at everything. It's good to know that he's alive. I'm not saying the human psychic we went to was wrong, because spirits could still come through, but I really thought my boy was gone. That was a roller coaster of emotions. One last quick thing I forgot was when I went to a psychic before, like I mentioned earlier, my sign was pennies, and my dad was told his sign is quarters. So I'm like, the day before we went, someone reached in our couch, my brother's best friend, and found a penny and a quarter in our couch, which could be a coincidence, but like I don't find any coin besides pennies. So like, but it was just funny because she's like, the whole time my Pop-Up was throwing quarters at my dad, like hitting him in the head, and I was like, why don't you send me that much money? 24-cent difference, let's go. Either way, I know I'm joking a lot in this video, but it's more just so like comforting for me, and I'm just very, very grateful for this entire experience, and I hope this video wasn't too long or too rambly. I'm not good at these type of videos, but it was very, very special, and I think anyone who has the opportunity should definitely try it. Life-changing. I have a lot more inner peace now knowing that like they're here. So yeah. At one point, even my childhood dog came through, one I have a tattoo for. She has walked right in and she was like, she's a licker, and you know, the things that they say that no one would know are just amazing. So I'm very grateful, and we're going again in like a year, almost 2 years. I think it's a little bit less than 2 years, but we're going again. But yeah, it's life-changing, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for 500 subscribers. That's so cool. It was like my dream as a kid was to be a YouTuber, so this is so cool. But thank you so much. I hope you guys liked this video. If you want more like story time videos, my life is crazy, literally chaotic. Like I had a twirl, hello. But you want more like videos like this, if I'm not too annoying, let me know. And I'll see you guys next week for my cash stuffing. Bye.